Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We are going to talk about something today that is really exciting and something I'm super deeply passionate about. So deeply passionate that I'm writing an entire book on it. And it's coming out next year, which is very exciting. And we're going to talk today about what is the missing love language. And I'm going to give you a personal share of something that has happened in the past week that really highlights how important it is that we know what the missing language of love actually is. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what is the missing love language? What does that even mean? And how can you start to cultivate this language for yourself? So if you're here and you're joining, say hi. Let me know where you're joining in from. Drop your name. With Instagram, I don't have people's names most of the time because most people's names aren't their Instagram handle. So I can't say hi to you unless you drop your name and where you're from. So please, if you are here, know that you are family. And I mean that from the depth of my heart. And my whole goal here on Instagram is to serve. And if you are here and you are in my community, I am here to serve you. I am here to hopefully give you some sort of inspiration, some sort of link so that you can start to shift your life and have deeper relationships, have, greater levels of wealth for yourself. I want you to feel like you can live the life that you truly deeply desire. So if you're here, you are family, and I want you to know that I see you, and I'm so grateful that you are here to spend your time with me. So with that being said, hello to everyone who is joining. Again, as you're joining, drop your name. I tried to get to questions and comments as they come in real time, but I get in flow when I start to speak and things move through me. And most of the time I forget that I'm even live on Instagram. So if you ask me a question and I don't get to it, please send me a DM. Ask me the question. I will answer it on one of these lives. I'm just not great at hanging out with the chat box as it's happening in real time. I don't know how the younger generations do it. It's like a freaking art. It's magic. I don't know how it happens. So with that being said, as you're joining, because I don't think I saw any names, maybe people did drop their names. Drop your name, drop where you're joining in from. Would love to be able to say hi to you. Okay, I don't think anybody did. So I'm doing okay. So let's talk about what the missing love language is. So we have all heard, and I just want to know if you are here, how many of you actually know your quote unquote love language, right? We've all heard about the 5 love languages: acts of service, gift giving, physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time. Those are the 5 main love languages. If you haven't read the 5 love languages, you should do it. If you haven't taken the test, you should do it. It's a buzzword right now, especially in the dating community. Well, it has been for a long time, where people will ask, what's your love language? And how do you give love? How do you receive love? So I want to know, if you are here, what is your love language? I want you to drop it in the comment box below. And I want to talk about something that most people haven't spoken about, which is the precursor to knowing your love language. I deeply believe that there is a missing love language, that if we do not actually harness this love language first, it is going to be very difficult for us to tap into and know the actual love language that is our primary love language. Okay, so there are these 5 love languages, and what I want to speak about today is, what do we need to know? What language do we need to know ourselves before we can actually tap into these 5 love languages? And the reason that I know this is because I've done a lot. You all know this. I was in the dating and relationship space for a long time. And a lot of my clients would come to me, some of them partnered, some of them not, talking about what their primary love language was. And no matter how long they were in partnership or how long they were in the dating world, they never felt like their love language was actually fully received. They had a hard time giving and they had a hard time receiving it. So I want to speak to you about what I think the missing love language is. And it's this. The missing love language is understanding your nervous system and understanding where your body chooses patterns of protection versus patterns of connection. If you were entering into a relationship without understanding and knowing the language of your nervous system, it is going to be impossible for you to give and receive love in the way that it is meant to be given and received. Okay? This is why if your love language, let's say, is quality time, but you have so much abandonment inside of your system that is peaking survival constantly, it doesn't matter how much quality time your partner spends with you, it's never going to feel like it is enough. Because your nervous system is constantly operating out of a baseline of survival. So before we can even talk about the 5 love languages, we have to start to look at the missing language of love, which I truly believe if everyone was able to speak this language, we would have a totally different reality when it came to relationships, the way that we relate to ourselves and others, and the things that we value in life, right? Money, health, all of it. Because when we operate from a space of safety, when we know the way that our nervous system reacts on a moment-to-moment basis, we are able then to operate from that space of safety so we can feel into the love language that is most in alignment with who we are. It's funny because when I work with clients for an extended period of time, once we start to tap into the missing language of love, which is the nervous system, their 5 love languages shift because they recognize, wow, I was actually feeling into needing more quality time, but that's not actually what I desire when I get to a space of safety inside of my system, right? I was wanting quality time because I was feeling abandoned. And so I felt like if somebody gives me more quality time, then that means that they were choosing me, that I was safe inside of the relationship. But that was coming from a space of needing that survival response to be met. So as you start to learn the language of your nervous system and you understand relational ruptures and you understand where your nervous system is seeking out patterns of protection versus patterns of connection, you'll be amazed to see that maybe your primary love language in relationship to the 5 love languages changes. Because how you craved love in the past, how you gave love in the past, was a reflection of you needing to have that survival response met from a false sense of safety versus an actual space of safety and security. Okay. So if this is resonating with any of you, drop in the comments like, yes, I get it. It makes sense. Light bulb. Okay. Because we cannot find that space of true deep connection if our nervous system is operating in this space of survival all the time. We're going to feel like we're constantly running out of air, right? We're constantly looking for someone to validate our existence. So I want to share a personal share about what I mean by this. Okay. So I've recently been dating somebody pretty seriously, and we've been dating for a couple of months. And we had an instance about a week ago where both of us were triggered. Okay. Now, because I know the language of my nervous system, I knew in that moment, because I had the awareness, that my nervous system was going into a freeze state. I could feel myself freeze physically. I could feel myself actually leave my body. I was noticing it as it was happening. I noticed that my heart rate slowed down. I noticed that I had no access to sensation and emotion. I was able to say, whoa, I am frozen. Now, in that same moment, I recognize, because I know the language of the nervous system, that my partner was feeling abandoned because I had left my body. I had gone into a freeze state. And I noticed in that moment that he started to feel flight. And I could feel it in his actual system. So much so that he was mobilizing, like he was getting up to leave. And because I have this missing language of love, which is understanding how the nervous system works, the old Lauren, prior to doing nervous system work, would have frozen, shut down, and he would have fled, and there would have been a rupture. That rupture and that trigger would have been completely exacerbated, and it would have continued on inside of the relationship. But because I had the awareness to know that I was frozen, and I also had the awareness to know that me freezing felt like he was being abandoned and it was causing him to go into flight, I was able to say, okay, can we pause for a second? I'm noticing right now that I am not in my body. And I'm also noticing that because I'm not in my body, you're feeling pretty abandoned right now. So can we just pause? And I grabbed his hand and I said, can you just feel my hand here? Like I need to de-thaw for a second because there's something happening internally. I need to take a moment to breathe. Clinically, I know that you feel abandoned because I'm not in my body right now, but can you just feel my hand here? Like, we'll talk about this in a second, but can you just feel my hand here? And we were able to take a moment to pause and come back into the present moment. After my system had a moment to thaw out, I was then able to have a conversation with him around why I froze. And he was then able to have a conversation with me around why he felt like he needed to flee, because me leaving my body made him feel abandoned. So because I had the awareness of knowing what was happening internally inside of my nervous system, when there was a point of rupture inside of the relationship, I was able to pause and respond versus react. This is the power of somatic work. This is the power of understanding what happens inside of your nervous system when something triggers you or when something doesn't feel safe. And so many of us don't have access to this language. We don't have access to what is actually happening in our system in a moment-to-moment basis. Now, a lot of people will come to me being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you were triggered. We're humans. We're going to be triggered. We are going to go into survival states because that's who we are, and we're living, and we're constantly interacting with people who have other wounds and situations that aren't fantastic. But if we haven't learned what it means to know the language of our nervous system, which means what happens inside of my body from an emotional perspective and a sensation perspective, what happens when I am triggered, when I go into a flight response? What happens when I go into a fight response? What happens when I go into a freeze or a fawn response? What viscerally, physiologically happens? How do I feel it inside of my body? I know the moment that I get triggered and I leave my body, my fingertips go cold and I blink out. I can physically feel myself leaving my body to protect myself. I now know that reaction like the back of my hand. Now, that triggered moment I hadn't had in a long time, but it happened. And because I know the pattern of it, I was able to stop, let myself thaw, get myself back to safety, regulate where I was in that moment from that dysregulated state, and then actually have a conversation around what was happening in my system and repair the relational rupture. And the beautiful thing as a result of that conversation was that we grew deeper in connection with one another. But how many of us are just sitting there throwing around our love language and we don't actually have the part that really matters, which is I understand when I am triggered and I can feel it happen inside of my body. I know how to pause, and then I know how to have conversation around what is happening so that we can repair this rupture. Most people will react from that space. Old Lauren would have frozen and removed herself, and his pattern would have been to run away from it, and then nothing would have been resolved. Chances are, a week later, that same trigger may have happened. We would have had a circular conversation or a circular experience. So the missing language of love, the actual love language that we all need to be talking about before we even consider the 5 love languages, is what is the language of my nervous system? What happens when I'm triggered? Physiologically, what happens? How do I react? And also, how do I pause and regulate and get myself to safety so that I can repair the relational ruptures that happen inside of partnership? So I can repair the relational ruptures that happen when I am in relationship to money, when I am in relationship to my health. How can I actually know what's happening? So many of us spend years in talk therapy. We talk about our problems. I spent 10 years in talk therapy and still attracted the same problems and relationships over and over again. And it's because I had not learned the language of my nervous system, the language of my body. I was not embodied. You can talk about your problems until you are blue in the face. You can go to your talk therapist and you can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and still not see the results you desire because your nervous system has a different story. Your nervous system speaks in sensation and it speaks in emotion. It doesn't speak in story. So even in that share that I just gave you that happened last week, if we would have just talked about it and I wasn't able to viscerally feel it and orient both of us to safety, same with him, he stayed, and then we were able to discuss. If I wasn't able to have the language to be able to discuss what I was feeling inside of my body when the trigger happened, it would have been really hard for us to repair that rupture. Because we're thinking about it cognitively. We're going in cycles inside of our brain, but we're not listening to what's happening physiologically inside. And this is the problem with what happens in a breakdown of so many relationships, right? When we experience trauma in our past, our body goes into a survival response to keep us safe. If this survival response was never given the proper container to renegotiate back to safety, every time we bump up to a trigger that is similar to what we experienced in the past, our body is going to go back into that survival response because it still feels like it's in threat, which is what happened the other night. But once I was able to pause and create a safe container for both of us, right? It takes two people to create a safe container to repair a relational rupture, which he did too. He didn't leave. He very much could have said, no way, I'm out. He stayed. And because we were both able to create that safety container, we were able to allow our nervous systems to come out of dysregulation into regulation. And then we were able to converse about what happened. Not from the space of you did this and you did this, but when this happened, my body felt like this. And this is why. And because you created that safety container, we were both able to access safety together. That is the missing love language. And hint, hint, this is what my book's about. It's all about how do we learn to speak that language for ourselves, but also how do we learn to speak that language inside of partnership? How do we learn to speak that language when we're dating? Because it truly, deeply is the missing connection. It's what we're all searching for, but can't seem to find. Right? The 5 love languages are great. Quality time's amazing. Physical touch is amazing. Words of affirmation are great. Acts of service are great. Physical touch is great. I don't know, I may have just repeated 2 of the same things. They're all great. But we can't actually truly deeply feel them and embody them and have them inside of our body if we don't know how to speak the language of what's actually happening inside. Old Lauren really valued gift giving and acts of service because I felt like if somebody gave me a gift, they loved me. Now, because I know the language of my nervous system, I understand that my true love languages are physical touch and quality time. I notice that my sense of safety gets deepened when I have loving touch and when someone truly spends time with me. Presence, true presence, which is I'm here with you. The partner I'm seeing now, I have never really seen his phone. It's like never around. We're together. He is present. We are here for quality time. And that is so important to me because it makes me feel safe. It makes me feel like he is truly here to see me and be in that partnership with me. And so that all shifted when I was able to understand the language of my nervous system. So this is just a bit of curiosity for you to start wondering, like, okay, do I truly know the language of my nervous system? And from that space, then what is my love language? What does it mean to give and receive love from that space? So I hope that this was enlightening and it sparked some conversation within you, like, ooh, this is interesting. I do need to understand this language to have deeper connection. I always tell the women that make their way into my collective program and into my home membership, you are the courageous ones. You are here because you refuse to settle. The majority of the world has settled in partnership. And it's sad. It's really sad to see. But if you make your way into my world, into my container, you are not interested in settling. You are interested in deep soul connection. Like true, deep, intimate, aligned connection. And if that is the reason that you are here, that is the reason that you haven't settled, that is the reason that you're trying to find a deeper level of intimacy within your partnership, then you've come to the right place, but it's going to require that you learn the language of your nervous system. We settle because we feel like there's a deep sense of, I'm not worthy enough to actually claim what it is I desire in partnership. And when you learn the language of your nervous system, when you understand how what has happened to you in the past has created ruptures in patterns of survival inside of your body, you can then start to regulate these responses, get to safety within yourself so that you can then have that safety and that communication and that language with someone that you want to build a deep, intimate, connected partnership with. When you know the language of your nervous system, when you truly know it, you and your partner will speak a different language that will deepen intimacy over and over and over and over again. That is the beauty of this work. This is also what I teach inside of my programs. So if you come into the collective, we go really deep. It's 3 months with me. And month 1, we look at what are your patterns of protection. We go back through your past relationship patterns. We go back through your core stories of limitation, which are big T and little t trauma moments. We go back through your childhood dynamics, your generational dynamics. We look at where were you in relationship with patterns of protection instead of patterns of connection? Where did those relational ruptures happen? Then in month 2, we do the somatic work to renegotiate these responses so that your nervous system can start to choose a baseline of connection versus protection. And then in month 3, I push you out of the nest and I'm like, let's go date from this space of connection now. Let's see how things show up differently for you. When you repair these relational ruptures and you start to choose as a baseline in your system, connection versus protection, what you attract shows up differently. There's no way that Lauren 6 years ago would have attracted a man who spoke this language and could actually be with her in a moment of repair like that and understand the language that was coming forward. That is a reflection of the work that I've done to truly know safety inside of my own system. And so that's what the collective teaches you. If you want to come into the collective, I'm getting ready to shut off enrollment. I will not reopen it until 2025. Just drop the word ALC. I guess it's letters, the words ALC below, and I will send you the link to apply. It is an application process. I'm very selective with the women that I allow into the collective container. If you want to just start dipping your toe into this work and hearing me teach more about it, come into my home membership. That is open for anyone. You get trainings galore when you join the home membership. I also do a 30-minute learning workshop every month. I do a 90-minute group somatic therapy session every month. You get access to my Master Your Nervous System mini course. If you come into the collective, you also get access to home. Home is open to anyone. Collective is application based. Okay, you can drop the word home if you're interested in coming into the membership and just start getting your feet wet around what I mean when I say the missing language of love. Right? You can start to learn what it's like to immerse yourself in this nervous system work. So if I can leave you with anything, it's this. Start to get curious about the missing language of love. Start to get curious about how your nervous system shows up inside of partnership, how it shows up in relationship to the things that really matter deeply to you. Because when you learn this language, your whole world will shift. Your relationships will shift. And if there's something tugging in your heart, it's because you're not here to settle for anything, right? You could settle. You've seen probably a lot of people in your life around you settle for subpar relationships, for mediocre jobs, for being okay that they're getting older and their body is changing, right? And just kind of throwing everything else out the window. You're surrounded by it. But if there's something pulling on your heartstrings, I'm meant for more. I am actually worthy of really deep, intimate connection. I am worthy of abundant wealth. I am worthy of an incredible body and feeling so energized in my 40s, in my 50s, in my 60s. If you know you're meant for more, at some point you're going to have to wake up to the missing language of love, which is the nervous system work. That is the key to having the life that you desire. So happy Tuesday. I love you guys so much. If you are a leader and you want to know more about trauma training and being trauma informed, come to my Embodied Leader Masterclass tomorrow, 4 o'clock Central Time. Just drop the word embody below. I'll send you the link. This is for leaders. So different than the work I do inside of my collective containers and inside of my home membership. This is for people that want to learn how to teach nervous system renegotiation and they want to become trauma informed. Right? These are for my leaders. So drop the word embody. I'll send you the link to join. I love you guys so much. Happy Tuesday. Hope this was inspirational and drop some little nuggets for you to get curious about. If you have questions, send me DMs and I will see you guys tomorrow.